Hey, UFC Fight Night on Fox. Dude, Rose looked phenomenal. She was a straight gangster. She was taking it to Watterson.
Yeah, no, I actually picked Watterson, but she looked incredible. But hey, before we get into all that, our bets hit.
Dude,
we made some money.
Dude, the save picks hit. That was phenomenal.
This is why we're doing it, guys. We're in it for the money. We're in it for you guys to make some money. I thought it worked out perfectly. The safe picks hit. We knew that was going to happen. We were pretty confident with this card. But hey, we got to obviously acknowledge when the money's made.
Hey, so the risky didn't hit, though, which is fine. Again, it's the risky. We want to hit like 1 out of every 10
and that's
of those.
why you're going to press the safes way harder, way more money than you're going to put
But,
on the
sir, I would like an apology from you. Robert Whittaker did win that fight. I knew the style was going to be a bad matchup. I thought Robert Whittaker looked phenomenal.
He looked great, man. I think that he really brought everything he needed to be there with Jacare. Jacare took him down. He was able to get out of the couple submission attempts and get up and then annihilate him standing up. I thought he looked great, and I think Robert Whittaker has a great future in the middleweight division.
We need to, we have our eyes set on it. So,
yeah.
I was already sold on Robert Whittaker, but even, I said on the last episode, I was like, yeah, I think he's going to win. That was an aggressive statement. Right?
Yeah.
Because definitely, Jacare had more ways to win that fight. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, God, I wish I didn't say that on the podcast.
That's why I said, I could totally get your argument there.
Yeah.
Because he could possibly stuff the takedown. And then, if Jacare had a stand with him, obviously Whittaker had the advantage. So that's why I said it. But I was like, I think Jacare has more ways to win. It didn't matter. Whittaker had that one way to win, and he did it. And he finished him in the second round. It was great.
Dude, that kid looks so good. We definitely need to keep our eyes on him.
I mean, what's next for him? You got to talk about maybe a fight with Mousasi, or he called out Bisping.
Yeah, well, either way, he's either got one more fight until he gets the title fight.
Yeah, one. Yeah, exactly.
He just beat the number 2 guy.
Yeah, he was ranked 3rd, but right there.
Well, who? So you have Jacare, and then above Jacare, and number 2 is who? Because number 1 is Yoel Romero.
He was ranked 3rd. I don't remember who was.
Because Yoel Romero's number 1. I thought Jacare was 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's number 2, but let's get into the main events of the night. Demetrius Johnson looked incredible. I mean, Wilson Hayes obviously being the best jiu-jitsu practitioner at that weight class, and he was able to not only stifle the game plan from him being able to take him down, he took him down. He was able to land strikes.
Even the transitions on the ground.
I thought he looked better in every single aspect of MMA than Wilson Hayes did, and that's just kudos to Demetrius Johnson. He's looked great.
Yeah. No. Demetrius Johnson literally is just so athletic, so explosive. Even on the ground, the transitions, he would stop every transition from Hayes and then get into a dominant position and just reign in terror. And there was nothing. Wilson Hayes couldn't do anything about it the entire fight. He got outstruck. He got out taken down. He got put in submission attempts. Demetrius Johnson looks better and better every single
time we've seen him progress and get better, and that's exactly what you want to see from your champion.
So good. Now that we're talking about that, can we do one thing? Can we please talk about your hate for him for whatever reason?
Well, this is what I'll turn this into. I believe that Demetrius Johnson, and I have no hate for him first and foremost. I think he's an incredible champion, and I think he's earned his right to have his debate settled. I think he's officially earned his way into the conversation of being the greatest of all time.
Yeah, he just tied the record.
He's tied the record
of most title defenses.
So now we got to have this conversation about him compared to someone like Silva, GSP, John Jones.
Cool.
So this is my take on it. Demetrius Johnson had 10 title fights. He's finished 6 of them, and he's looked incredible. He's very dominating, and I think his strongest attribute to being considered the greatest of all time would be the fact that he's consistently looked better every single time we've seen him in the octagon.
And I think that's it's a dramatic better. It's not like, oh, he did this one thing a little bit. You see him fight and you're just like, oh my God. Even so, his fight number 2 with Dotson, I was like, okay, Dotson hit him pretty hard the first time they fought, almost TKO'd him, and then the second time they fought, he annihilated Dotson. And then it's just every fight he fights, whether it's a rematch of the same guy or it's a new up-and-comer, he just annihilates them.
He's looked a lot better. So like I said, every time he's come in, he's looked a lot better. 6 finishes. I think it was 4 submissions and 2 knockouts, I'm pretty sure. He's looked incredible every single time we've seen him. We haven't seen too many disappointing fights from him since he's got the title, and he's been the only UFC flyweight champion. Now getting into Anderson Silva and what he brings to the table for being the greatest of all time. So he had 10 title defenses. He finished 8 of them, 6 knockouts, 2 submissions. I think the strongest arguments that you have for Silva are the definite difference in the competition that he faced versus what Demetrious Johnson faced. I don't think Demetrious Johnson has fought the guys to the level that Anderson Silva was doing it. Another thing that's going to go Anderson Silva's way is Demetrious Johnson just had his 10th title fight, and it was on free TV. And the numbers that he did on that title fight were the lowest that UFC on Fox has ever seen.
So why do the numbers define?
Because this is a business.
Hold on. Let me get my point across. First of all, maybe you say he hasn't fought the type of fighters that Anderson Silva has because Demetrious Johnson is so good that he makes people look that amateur. That's something you have to take into consideration.
Sure, but Anderson Silva's beaten legends. What legend has Demetrious Johnson?
Well, you're not going to have legends when you have a brand new division.
And that's exactly the point right there. For me, to say that Mighty Mouse, who is an incredible fighter, excellent fighter, one of the best in the world, but I don't know if I would say the greatest in the world. To me, it's almost like looking back at Ronda Rousey when she was in her heyday. She was a very, very dominant champion, but she was very ahead of her time. And the level of I would never, ever, even back in the day, I used to always argue that Ronda Rousey was ever to be considered the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time because the division is too new, it's too shallow.
I agree.
The level of competition just isn't as high. When we look at Anderson Silva, Anderson Silva made his UFC debut against Chris Lieben. He beat Lieben, beat him up. Rich Franklin, who a lot of people forget was was incredible at that time. He was in his prime. He looked great. He was beating everybody.
He had the title, right? That's who he beat for the title.
He had the title.
Rich Franklin was awesome. I used to be a huge Franklin fan.
Yes. Travis Luter, Nate Marquardt, Rich Franklin again, Dan Henderson, Patrick Cote, Talis Ladies, Forrest Griffin, Damian Maia, Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, Okami, Sonnen again, Stephan Bonner, which, whatever, Stephan Bonner. But my point, and that was before he fought Chris Weidman, that's the who's who.
Hold on a second, Kamuela, can I say one thing? Those are the who's who's because you know who they are because that division's been around for a while, but that doesn't take away any credit for the type of fighters he's fighting in the 125ers. You've just specifically never heard about him because the division's new. MMA in the 125-pound is not a new division. It's new to the UFC. These guys were established in other organizations because the UFC didn't have a 125-pound division. Those fighters are still good. Dude, Wilson Hayes, is his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu accolades are unreal. Okay, he beat an Olympic level wrestler,
and they don't compare to Damian Maia or some of the guys that Silva beat.
Absolutely,
I get what you're saying, man. But I'm saying Silva beat these guys for so long, and the way that he was beating it was so dominating. Like I said, he finished 8 out of his 10 title fights. And the thing is, he was also successful at 2 different weight classes. He went up to light heavyweight, didn't miss a beat. He had multiple successful fights at light heavyweight. We saw Demetrious Johnson go up and fight Dominic Cruz. Now, obviously, that was Dominic Cruz, the best fighter.
So he didn't go up
class.
and fight Dominic Cruz. He started that weight division because they didn't have the 125-pound weight division. And he lost to Dominic Cruz via, was it a decision? I'm pretty sure it was a decision. So it wasn't like he got finished or anything. And obviously,
I'm just saying, when Silva had his reign, he didn't lose to anybody.
Obviously, too, what I was getting at was obviously too is that Demetrious Johnson is a different fighter now, clearly night and day from when he first got in the UFC when he fought Dominic Cruz. He fights Dominic Cruz now, it could very well be a very different fight.
Sure, and once he, like I said, the conversation isn't over because Demetrious Johnson's still fighting and Silva's still fighting. So I mean, the conversation isn't over, but I think right now, looking at the 2 careers, Silva was more successful at 2 different weight classes, had way more fights in a row where he was able to switch between those weight classes, and then the cult following, the Silva following, what he's been able to do. He was selling out pay-per-views. Sonnen Silva was a huge fight. I mean, he wasn't fighting on free TV.
Dude, yeah, I don't think it matters whether you fight in
it
free
does.
TV. No, hold on. Let me get my point across. Please stop interrupting me. So, all right. I don't think it matters if you fight on pay-per-view, free TV, Spike TV, or whatever. If you're consecutively winning in the UFC and you're getting 10 title defenses in a row and you're winning and then you break that record, how are you not the GOAT? Just because you're not bringing in the ratings because, let's be real, they're not bringing in the ratings because they weigh 125 pounds. That's literally the fact, right? But we can't take away his skills and attributes just because he weighs 125 pounds. That guy looks phenomenal. when he's fighting.
Well,
that
why
cage.
is that? 145 didn't used to be a huge weight class until Conor McGregor hit. So obviously you can't sell
That's
fights
so not
at
true.
a smaller weight
Jose
class.
Aldo.
I would argue that a little
Yeah,
bit.
Jose Aldo, Frank Yeager, Jose Aldo,
Chad Mendes.
They were doing just fine. The ratings over there.
They weren't as big as Silva or John Jones or some of these bigger guys.
Oh, yeah,
though. It
100%.
is no joke that the
even
smaller
now,
weight classes don't sell as much normally
Yes.
as the higher weight
Yes,
classes.
and
So
even-
I get what you're saying, but I'm saying Silva defeated the better guys for longer, is still in the game, and I don't think Demetrius Johnson has done enough to me at this point to be considered the GOAT.
I don't think you could talk about Anderson Silva still being the greatest of all time now. I think you have to look at him when he was in his prime.
No, obviously we're looking at the prime. If you were to consider this to hinder him, I don't think that's right because he's able to fight still.
I feel like you're defining these guys as better just because their names are more famous because they're bigger. And when I say bigger, I mean physically bigger guys. Again, even in boxing, for example, the bigger guys,
the money's in the heavyweights.
The money's in the heavyweights. Always
Yeah,
history.
absolutely.
Now Mayweather was the exception. Conor McGregor is the exception. Okay, there's always going to be that exception just because of who they are and the personality attributes. But heavier guys will always draw more rating, bro. You will have heavyweights that are top 5 contenders that will do better ratings than the champion of a 125-pound division. But that doesn't. I don't think that goes into effect on whether you're the greatest of all time or not. That's the business side. I'm talking greatest of all time as far as actual fighting goes.
Now, yes, I hear what you're saying. This is not to take anything away from Mighty Mouse. He's incredible, but it wasn't just that Anderson Silva was a big dude that people tuned in to watch him. People tuned in to watch him because he would put his hands behind his back, stand in front of you, move his head like he was in the Matrix, and then knock you out. So you look at the way that Anderson Silva in his prime, the way that he was finishing people, it's not that just that he is an incredible fighter. It's he was doing things that nobody else could do and that nobody's ever seen before.
It wasn't just the finishes, it was the way that he did it. It was the fact that he could walk up against the cage and say, give me your best shot, because they were more scared than he was when he would get up against that cage. And that goes against all conventional MMA thought. So, I mean, he was just so dominant. And I think that, okay, sure, you might not want to take away views or pay-per-views or anything like that, free TV, whatever you want to take there. But you got to take the fan base into account. Who has more fans? Who has more of a cult following? Obviously, Anderson Silva's a bigger fighter.
100%.
And I think that has to be taken into account for the greatest of all time. I definitely think that that's part of the thing because you should create fans through your fighting style. I mean, people were huge GSP fans, but then towards the end of his career, people started to tune out a little bit because of the way that he was beating people.
I want to say actually that I believe, and maybe you can chime in on this, I believe that's false because Silva has never done numbers like GSP as far as ratings go, and that's a fact.
Silva Chonin 2 did more than any GSP fight that's ever happened.
I don't think that's accurate. Is that accurate?
I believe, I'd have to double check, but I believe that broke at the time before Conor McGregor hit the scene. I believe that broke
because
the record.
I've read numerous times.
But GSP was a massive.
But I've read
a
numerous
massive
times
draw.
that George St. Pierre had the most pay-per-view buys until Brock Lesnar got in the UFC, and that was after the Chael Sonnen and Silva fight.
Not the second one. Brock Lesnar was already in the...
Well, I think what got the most pay-per-view buys was UFC 100, and that had Brock Lesnar and GSP on the card. So,
Yeah.
But the Silva Shonen fight was after that. This is the second one. But
So that broke it?
which broke all the records.
That broke the records. But
Again,
regardless,
I'd have
they
to
were
double
both-
check on that, but I believe that's...
They were both huge draws. I'm not taking anything away from GSP, but I think for Demetrius Johnson to be considered in these top things, I think he has to have the fan bases that GSP
But
has,
see,
that
but
Anderson
you're
Silva
taking-
has, that John Jones has.
Yeah, but again, I think you're taking the greatest of all time as in who's selling the most, who's watching the most. I'm talking about it as a fighter. I don't care about the fan base. If I'm talking about greatest of all time, I'm talking about actual fighting attributes, nothing business related. Business has nothing to do with how good of a fighter you are.
You're talking about skill-wise.
Skill
Skill for
sets.
skill, pound for pound, skill set, who's the
Yes.
best.
Skill set, I think because of the competition that Anderson Silva fought, I think you still got to give it to him. It's too new of a weight class for me to give the flyweights that he's fighting. I mean, they fight Demetrius Johnson, and then you never see him again. Besides Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo, none of these guys are around anymore. A lot of these guys are out of the league, and they're not consistent. The guys that Anderson Silva beat, some of them are still fighting today. You know what I mean? Dan Henderson. Michael Bisping just beat Dan Henderson. That was the last title defense he had. So, I mean, you have a lot of these guys that are still fighting today. They have long careers. He beat real Hall of Famers. I don't think we've seen Demetrius Johnson beat a Hall of Famer yet.
Again, you can't. He'll never beat a Hall of Famer yet because that division hasn't been around long enough to have a Hall of Famer. I think he'll be the first.
And it sucks that that's.
And I think he'll be the first Hall of Famer in that division. But again, those fighters are still around. But the problem is they don't have the 125ers fight nearly as much, obviously, as the 205ers. The 170 pounders, 185ers, clearly. So that's maybe why you don't see them come back as often. But again, if he does break that record, let's say let me ask you this. Let's say he sets a new record at 15 straight wins. Do you then say, okay, he got 15 in a row, Silva got 10, GSP got 10?
I think then we revisit it. I can't honestly say just because of the competition level. I really
so because of his size. Does he never become the GOAT?
He was able to succeed at not only middleweight but light heavyweight, and we both know that that's the.
How many fights did he have at light heavyweight? Like 2 or 3? No, it wasn't anything crazy. He stepped up a few times. It wasn't. He
stepped up on a 2-week notice and beat a guy, finished him. TKO.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
So I mean, he was able to do that successfully. I would like to see maybe Demetrius Johnson do something like that.
So okay, let's say Demetrius Johnson. The big hype right now is Demetrius Johnson is supposed
Cody Garbrandt.
No, that's wrong. It's Demetrius Johnson to fight avenge his loss. Against
Dominic
Cruz.
So let's say he avenges that loss and beats Dominic Cruz. Then do we talk? Then
I think that would move him a little bit closer. Realistically, let me get this point across. I think that the fighter that would be closest to becoming the greatest of all time would be John Jones upon his return. If he's able to return,
nobody's gonna argue that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If he's able to return, get his belt back, beat Cormier, who's beat everybody since he's been gone, has looked incredible. If he's able to beat Cormier. And then I think if you look at the light heavyweight division, it's real dry right now. I don't think there's a bunch of competition there, and we'll get into that later. I think if he steps up into that heavyweight division and has success, to me, he would have my vote. And that's hard to say from a huge Silva fan.
Yeah, I personally think that is the conversation is between Anderson Silva and John Jones. Because when you go through John Jones' record, he literally has beaten the who's who in this division. He also beat Stephen Bonner, Jake O'Brien. He was whooping Matt Hamill until he
destroyed Matt Hamill. That's not a real loss.
Yeah.
He's never lost. Nobody's ever beat him.
Let's Ryan Bader, Shogun, Rampage, Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor, Chael Sonnen, Gustafsson, Teixeira, DC, and OSP.
All of those guys were relevant at that time too.
He beat all of them in their prime.
And to my defense, just so you guys know, I'm playing devil's advocate here because sometimes I feel you hate on Demetrius Johnson a little bit because of his size, and I don't like to take that away from him. I think he is one of the greatest fighters, but as far as the GOAT, I don't think Demetrius Johnson's the GOAT. Just so you know that.
Who's your GOAT then?
Dude, I was actually going to get into that. To me, it was John Jones. Now, but here's the one thing though that is I think at one time I thought John Jones was going to be the GOAT, but now he may not be the GOAT because of these long layoffs. Dude, we did not see the same John Jones against OSP, right?
With that said, OSP is kind of an awkward fighter. It's like when
No. He fought very rusty.
It's like when Mighty Mouse fought Tim Elliott. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
sometimes fighters, you have an off fight. Sometimes it happens. You have an off night. I don't think Demetrius Johnson looked as good in that fight at Tim Elliott, but I won't take anything against him. It was just a weird style fight.
And then he came back and looked phenomenal against Wilson.
Exactly. And if you look at the best in boxing, who do we say? Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. These guys both had really long layoffs. Muhammad Ali because
who's that one Mexican boxer? Is it who was like 83-0?
I don't know who you're talking. Julio Cesar Chavez had a lot of fights.
So who's the Mexican kid that's fighting coming up? Is it against Canelo? Is that who he's
Julio
fighting?
Cesar Chavez Jr.
His dad. His dad was like 83-0. Actually,
Yeah.
just I don't know if anyone knows that. And then he took time off, came back and lost. So people don't talk about him, but I think he may be the greatest of all time.
Yeah, he's had over 100 professional fights. He's definitely a legend. But I'm just saying, as far as conventional thinking, most people bring up Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson.
Because they're more fun to watch.
Yes, yeah. and they did a lot. And they were very dangerous. I just think that they were both able to overcome long layoffs. So I'm not going to hold that against John Jones. Obviously, I mean,
let's say he
there's
comes
some
back,
moral things and stuff like that. If he's able to come back, overcome that, beat Cormier, and then have
but let's say he
success
comes back, and let's say, and he should beat Cormier, but due to ring rust, he loses. Does he now come out, taken out of the GOAT conversation?
Here's what would happen if that were the case. There'd be a third fight. There'd be a third fight, and that one would be both of their next fights in their career. Neither one of them would fight anybody else. It'd be a rematch right away, and then we would be able to see Jon Jones, after freshly coming off that second DC fight, and then if we were to fight him a third time, I don't think ring rust would be a factor there.
And then if he can overcome that adversity of losing, and then thinking, oh, do I even have it anymore? Am I still this guy? Come back, beat him, and then like I said, if he can succeed there, and I really want to see him. He's a huge human being. Did you guys see that grappling match between him and Dan Henderson?
Yeah, it was actually really
good. He was 230, and he was way bigger than Dan Henderson.
Yeah.
So I really think that he could have a lot of success at the heavyweight division. Do I think he could take the belt? Who knows? But I think he could have a lot of success.
But my God, man, like that guy needs to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Literally, and I read something today. They're actually, previously Dana White was like, I will never give him a main event because you can't trust the guy.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? He just keeps messing up. But now I'm reading stuff that they're actually in the works of giving him and Cormier a main event comeback.
Of course they will. I don't care what Dana.
But as far if I was Jon Jones, I would take a tune-up fight first. I would not fight DC right away coming off another year layoff, or was it year? Right? It was like a year.
I just think it adds more to his legacy if he's able to come off.
It's not the smart
2 years.
If I was his manager, I'd say this is not. What
No,
you do.
I definitely get what you're saying. Maybe if I were Jimmy Manuel, who I think he would absolutely maul.
Starch.
So I mean, again, for me, this whole conversation started about the greatest of all time. Right now, I would have to say number 1, Anderson Silva. Number 2, Jon Jones. And number 3, I would put Demetrius Johnson right now at number 3. And obviously, all 3 of these guys are current UFC fighters and are currently on the UFC roster. So these numbers could change. But right now, at this point, I'm going to say those are my 1, 2,
and
3.
for me, I would go Jon Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I would then go as well Silva and then Demetrius Johnson. Like I said, I wasn't trying to get across that Demetrius Johnson was the GOAT. I just feel that...
You just wanted to add his voice.
Well, I'm
you
just
wanted
saying,
to have Demetrius Johnson have an argument here.
Well, I'm just saying there's a lot of people that just totally discredit the guy because he weighs 125 pounds. There's so much skill there. That 125-pounder would kick the shit out of any 150 to 180-pound dude He would.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. What makes somebody a fan favorite? And I think one of those things is athletes are the closest things to superheroes in real life
that we have. That's all we got.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason
why
heavyweights.
Dude,
I think that's part of the reason why heavyweights make so much money is because people look at that person, look at a Brock Lesnar, and you're like, that dude's not real.
How do you
that
beat
dude's
him?
not human.
Yeah. The heavyweight is the baddest man on the planet. They said at the biggest weight class, I will beat anybody. And that's why I think it's so intriguing. And this is one of the weaker heavyweight divisions we've seen. And sometimes there's just a bunch of Greek gods walking around. You're like, oh my God, these guys would beat everybody else on the planet. And I still think there's some guys like that, like Kane. I love to watch him fight. Stipe. The up-and-comer Francis Ngannou, I think he's incredible. I think he's the future of the heavyweight division. But it's that aspect that they could beat anybody. I mean, as far as we know, Demetrius Johnson, he's 5'4", 125 pounds.
Yeah.
He could lose a bar fight to
100%.
A 210-pound guy from Purdue that just wrestled.
Yeah, I was going to say, or if there's some lineman who weighs 250 pounds. Yeah, I'm not saying he's beating those guys.
I'm taking Ray Lewis over Demetrius Johnson.
That's true.
And so
that's true.
But I'm not taking Ray Lewis over Cain Velasquez any day.
No.
After a back surgery, I'm still taking Cain Velasquez.
Yes.
He's just an animal,
Yeah.
And so that definitely does hurt his case, but there's nothing I could do to change that.
And that's the thing. You look at somebody like Anthony Rumble Johnson, and you're like, dude, you'd have to pay me millions to step in the cage with that guy.
I know.
And then there are casual fans, and of course they're out of their minds, but there are casual fans who look at Mighty Mouse and think, I don't know, man. I might be able to take that guy. It's a different feeling. It's a different feeling.
Every time I watch Mighty Mouse, I'm weighing him up. I'm like, what are my chances? Like, could I get him? No, I'm just kidding. But no, I definitely get what you're saying there. There's definitely some guys that think.
Don't you hate those people? Like, I remember one time I was at a Twin Peaks watching. I was watching the Aldo versus McGregor card, and there's this kid there that I'm not gonna say his name, but he was mutual friends with some of my friends, so he like ran into us and he was like, "What's up?" And we're hanging out, and there's a fight on. He's like watching it, and he's like, "Dude, I could kick the shit out of both of these guys," and I just went, "Bro." You couldn't kick the shit out of the worst UFC fighter in the UFC. There's this such like false sense of
There's a disconnect
of reality. I really think those guys should go and he's never been to an MMA gym in his life.
Here's the thing. Of course not.
Of course he has.
Because if he had, he wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
He's a street fighter, right?
Nobody watches the NFL and thinks, dude, I'd be a better quarterback than Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
But for some reason, people watch MMA and they think that they could do a better job than who they're watching.
It's because they've been into a fist fight, and so they think that they can fist fight with these guys, and it's completely different. It's just like, I'm sure you played pickup football, but you're not going to go try to, tackle OBJ or any of these guys that play now.
Exactly. But think about it. It's the only sport in the world. I can't think of another sport. The only professional sport in the world where somebody, the casual human being, looks at that and thinks, I think I could do that. I mean, how many guys have you guys run into who say, "Oh, dude, I should do that.
Bro, it's
I want to get into that. I could do that."
It's because in a man's DNA, we're designed to.
You think you can throw them things,
it's our DNA to, no matter who you are, to be the baddest dude around. It's in our DNA. All of us wants to be that.
Like a pride that men have.
Yeah.
And then it's also you got to make sure that you can take somebody. You always feel like, I got to be in tip-top shape just in case anybody tries me. Yeah. So when you have that pride, you're like, I don't know, this guy's small. I feel like I could take him. And what's so weird is I think it's more so in MMA than it is boxing. I don't hear that as much in boxing. When
exactly.
people are like, I think I could beat Floyd. I don't hear that as much. So I do think that's weird.
It is strange. And again, it's the only sport. You never hear somebody be like, "Oh, dude, I would totally beat Steph Curry in a game of horse."
Yeah, exactly.
You just don't hear people say that. But at the same time, too, men never want to admit that they get their ass kicked by anybody.
That's
by
a tough pill to
anybody.
swallow.
And again, going back to DJ, I think that's why people look at this guy and they're like, dude, he's 5'4", he's 125er. I like my chances.
Yeah.
I think anybody that weighs 180 and below gets that. It's not in the UFC, obviously, or even a real mixed martial arts. Anyone who's just a normal human being, 180 and below gets the shit kicked out of them by Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, one thing that I want to say too, and we got to keep this really short because we're running out of time here. But my three, it would probably go John Jones in this order: John Jones, Anderson Silva, and maybe Jose Aldo in his prime. I think you guys are forgetting about him a little bit. And the guys that
10 years undefeated.
He was the only featherweight champion before Conor McGregor. But we're running out of time. We'll have to talk about more of that later. One thing that I do want to ask you guys before we get into our fight picks for this weekend is real quickly. We talk about DJ and we talk about him. For whatever reason, he's breaking records, but in the worst way possible. He's reaching all-time low ratings. Yeah. In your opinion, and Vinny, let's start with you. In your opinion, what does somebody need to do to become a fan favorite? What makes an MMA superstar?
Phenomenal. So I like that question. So at a 125 pounder, listen, no matter what, you're going to have low ratings. So in order to get around that, you need to go up your weight division and fight someone like the champion at 135 or avenge your loss to Dominic Cruz. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You avenge that loss. Now you haven't lost once you avenge it, right? So I think that's the main key to getting his ratings up. And as well, he needs to find his niche market. I know he's really involved in the video game industry. That's great. Get more involved with social media. Hire a really good publicist. He doesn't have any of that. He's been very vocal about that. All right? Get with a good marketing company because you can't be Conor McGregor. There's only one Conor McGregor, so don't implement that platform. At 125, that doesn't work for you. That's what I think he needs to do.
I think as far as what makes a star, I think it's your finishing ability, and he's proven that he can finish guys. But afterwards, he does this little flip, and then he grabs the mic, and he's like, he's always like, he's so happy to be here, I think people like a little more of a badass bravado to it, like kind of like how Jorge Masvidal is like, yeah, who wants it now? Dana, he's trying to bet Dana $200,000 on his next fight. People like a little edginess. I think there's no edginess with Demetrius Johnson, and that hurts him. So I think it's being able to finish fights, having an exciting fighting style, and in marketing is huge right now. If you got to talk some crap, I think you got to, do it. Call some fighters out. Demetrius Johnson should be like, hey, I'm killing this weight class. I'm out. I'm going to 135, something like that. I think that would definitely bring some attention to him. But yeah, like I said, I think it's your ability to finish fights, your fighting style, and the marketing that you have. I think you definitely got to talk. People got to hear you. Your voice has to be heard. And so you got to say something worth hearing. I mean, I was just watching an interview with Demetrius Johnson, and you're right. He was talking a lot about video games and stuff like that. If he did more of calling people out and saying, Dana, where's my money? I need to get paid or I'm out, stuff like that, it brings people attention. It is kind of negative attention, but I mean...
Attention's attention.
Attention's attention, exactly.
I think that this is a topic that we're going to have to bring back at another time because we could really go in depth with this. We're just running out of time. But when you look at fighters like GSP was never a trash talker. Always clean cut, always respectful, massive superstar. So and then of course you have on the polar opposite, you have the Conor McGregor, the dude who's always GQ'd up, running his mouth. So we could really break this down and look at stars and what
You
made
got
them
someone
so
like
successful.
Silva who didn't talk at all. He barely spoke the language. He let us fight and talk. That's what I like.
Exactly. And it was a huge star. And then Chael Sonnen. A lot of people say that Chael Sonnen was the McGregor before there was a McGregor.
He talked his way into every major fight he had.
Yeah,
every
McGregor
major
did
fight.
it way better.
It's true, and we could talk about this forever. But real quickly before we wrap this thing up, we got UFC this weekend. Who you guys put money on? Who are your picks?
Yeah, for the picks, we actually got 3 picks for you. Let's go over that real quick. So, obviously, first fight of the night is going to be Cub Swanson versus Artem Lobov. I'm going with Cub Swanson. Are you in agreement to that?
Absolutely. Cub Swanson's easy money.
Yeah, and then next fight, I'm going to go with A La Quinta versus Diego Sanchez. Again, I think that's easy money as well.
Oh, yeah, no, great fight. I think Quanta should easily beat Diego.
Yeah, and then 2 fighters you guys may not be too familiar with. I'm going to take Jessica Pena, or is it Pena or Pena?
Pena.
Yeah, Jessica Pena versus Danielle Taylor. And those are going to be your safe picks. So put at least 10 to 20% of your bankroll on those guys. That's your guarantee money in our opinion. As far as a risky bet goes, I would take those guys as well. I personally would like to take John Dotson. Are you in agreement to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would take Stevie Ray over Joe Lozon.
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah, I was gonna say Stevie Ray over Joe Lozon. And let's see if I got anyone else for this.
I think that's safe right there. I mean, that's 4 solid picks for your risky.
Yeah, you could. So you want to add? Okay, so for the risky, one more time, we're going Cub Swanson, A La Quinta, Dobson, Stevie Ray, and Pena.
Yeah, I like it, guys.
Yeah.
Again, put more of your money on your safe picks. That's going to be your bread and butter. Occasionally, you'll hit the risky, and it's definitely a nice reward, but we can't stress it enough. The safe picks are going to hit a lot.
Yeah.
The risky is going to be an occasional hit. So,
Yeah.
again, it's all about bankroll management, as Vinny likes to say.
Yeah, 100%. So, again, guys, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to just reiterate this. Like, subscribe, comment.
We appreciate all the love, all the support. If you have any other points that you want to make, or if you agree with Vinny, you agree with me, you agree with Kamuela, put all your comments and stuff like that below.
Thanks, guys.